School choice supporters have touted a recent North Carolina State University study assessing the impact of the state's Opportunity Scholarship Program. We've featured some of those supporters on this program. Now we chat with two of the researchers themselves. Stephen Porter is a professor and Anna Egalite an assistant professor in NC State's Department of Educational Leadership, Policy, and Human Development. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having us on.
So people who've listened to this show have heard about this report. When you look at everything that you put together on the assessment of how this affected student achievement, what's the main takeaway that you hope people in North Carolina will know about it?
Well, Mitch, it's very important to keep in mind that we consider this a pilot study. This is certainly not the definitive word on the program. We were able to recruit 698 students, and that was a big lift to do that. We had to administer an assessment to them. Those were students in private and public schools, and conduct a matching analysis to ascertain the program's impact. So we're very pleased that we've been able to do that and give some sort of a snapshot into student performance in the program, but it's important to keep in mind we cannot speak about average student performance for kids getting these scholarships.
Not a definitive study then?
Not
Correct.
at all, yeah.
So obviously we mentioned at the outset, school choice supporters have looked at this, especially the lines in there talking about the positive, large, statistically significant impact for the students who were participating in this. They've said, hey, this is a sign that the voucher program is working well. Are they right? And if they're not completely right, what caveats or other qualifications should they keep in mind?
Go ahead, and I'll jump in.
Well, we can say that the subsample, the 698 students that made it into our analysis, and it's actually a smaller number that made it into the final model that has all of the control variables that are so important to account for, certainly we can say with some degree of confidence that they're performing higher than they otherwise would have in math and in language skills. But the thing to keep in mind is that we cannot say that the program overall is effective because we just don't have enough information yet. That's something we would love to be able to do. It would take a larger sample, and it would take some changes to how the program's currently designed. So it's not something that lends itself to evaluation right now. We thought it was important to do the work so that we could demonstrate these are the barriers in place right now. If you're serious about seeing an evaluation, this is what needs to be overcome.
I would say the other caveat is that unfortunately we don't know enough about all the private schools in the state to say exactly what was going on with the private schools that agreed to allow us to test our students. I think a reasonable guess would be that they are relatively well functioning, which is why they wouldn't mind us coming in and testing their students. So if I had to put a caveat on the results, it would be it's probably more the effect of giving a kid a voucher and letting them transfer to a well-functioning private school as opposed to any private school in the state.
So questions involving both the sample of the students, but also the sample of the schools involved.
Yes.
Exactly.
I think probably the sample of the schools is the bigger factor than the sample of students.
And that leads into the next question, and that is there have been some people who monitor this situation, especially those who are not as big of fans of school choice, who have raised questions about the study itself and said, this isn't telling us what the school choice supporters think it's telling us. Do they have legitimate concerns about the way this was conducted?
So I think the context matters here. Where there was previously a knowledge vacuum, we now have some glimmer of information about what's going on, so we see that as being of value. But yes, they are right to have concerns because we still don't know enough about the students, the impact of the program on students' academic outcomes.
I also think there's some confusion about self-selection. There's really two levels here. The first is schools on both the public and private side had to select to participate, and then individual students within those schools had to agree, or their parents had to agree to be tested. And so when I read some of the commentary, it seems as if people are confusing those two issues. We have a pretty rich variety of variables, most importantly the prior year EOG score. So my gut feeling is that selection at the student level is not really what's driving our results. Instead, it's I think they do have a point when they say that our sample of schools on both the public and private school side are not completely representative of schools in the state. But that's typical in these kinds of studies. In essence, it's difficult to achieve perfect internal and external validity, and so, as is often the case, researchers focus on strong internal validity at the expense of external validity.
You know, there's something to be said about letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. We have acknowledged and been transparent about all the limitations of what we can say, but we're still proud that we've done the work so that we can say, all right, we know one more thing now than we did previously. What can we do better? And so we've started a conversation.
That is the voice of Anna Egalite. You also heard from Stephen Porter there with NC State University's Department of Educational Leadership, Policy, and Human Development. So you have this study, which actually isn't even the first study. It's one of several that you've done related to the Opportunity Scholarship Program. Your answers suggest to me that there is much more work that can and should be done on this. What are the types of things that you would like to see moving forward studying this program?
So the gold standard evaluation that we would like to do requires for the program to be oversubscribed. If there is a situation in which more students apply than vouchers are offered, it lends itself very nicely to a very rigorous gold standard study where we could compare students and make causal claims about whether their achievement went up or went down and actually know definitively what the impact was. So that idea of a participation cap is perhaps unpopular, but it's something that should be put on the table if we are serious about evaluating the program.
And by saying oversubscribed, what you mean is that some people would end up getting the voucher, others wouldn't, and you could compare those actual people rather than try to find similar students in public schools.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and the way the program is currently structured, pretty much anyone who applies and follows through all of the steps will receive the voucher. So no one is actually turned away, which is different from many other voucher programs in the country.
How important is it from the vantage point of researchers like yourselves that we get some sort of good, legitimate look at how this is working beyond the pilot that shows some potential good signs for this program? How important is it to move on and not just say, okay, this is enough, we know it works,
Sure.
to move beyond that and say, we have more evidence that this actually does or doesn't work?
I mean, there's about over 7,000 students using these vouchers at the moment, and it's a $28 million program that's entering its 5th year of operation, and we still know very little. We've attempted to bridge that gap, provide some insight into the program through the reports that are all posted on our website at NC State. But for such a large program, I think that there is a public policy interest in knowing more about its impact.
In the time that we have left, the General Assembly in our state has put forward a long-term commitment to this program. There's more funding going out several more years now. As that moves forward, from a research perspective, is it going to be important for them to have some good, solid study piece in place rather than just rely on researchers who were interested in it and wanted to do something? Should they build something specifically into the law?
It depends on their goals. If their goal is to expand choice for the sake of choice, and for some people that is sufficient, then they have met that goal. The program has grown every year it's been in operation. If their goal is to expand quality choices, quality seats in which students are learning more as a result of participating in the program, then we have no idea if we're meeting that goal. The program is not set up to be evaluated, and that requires some changes if it's going to happen.